السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Inshallah ta'ala will start today the tafsir of Surah Al-Haqqah. Surah Al-Haqqah is Surah number 69. Surah Al-Haqqah, it's named Al-Haqqah, and this is the name that is well known to the surah. Some named it Surah Al-Silsila because it's mentioned in the surah ثم في سلسلة ذرعها 70 ذراعا فاسلكوه, a chain, because it's mentioned there. But what is known is, or even some would call it Al-Wa'iyah, but it's Surah Al-Haqqah, and it's mentioned in the very beginning, like Al-Haqqah to Mal-Haqqah, and it's one of the names of the Day of Judgment, like Surah Al-Qari'ah and the like of that. Of course, it's a Makki surah, and it was said that it was revealed in the 5th year before Hijrah, and it was said as to be the number of revelation 77 after Surah Al-Mulk and before Surah Al-Ma'arij. After Surah Al-Mulk and before Surah Al-Ma'arij. So this surah, as the like of the Makki surahs, that it has the mention of the day of Al-Qiyamah, as it's clear from the name of the surah and the beginning of the surah, and warning those who deny the day of judgment, and to remind them of what happened to the nations before, of punishment in this life and the punishment in the hereafter, and warning those who associate partners with Allah, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved the believers from the punishment, and to remind them of the favors of Allah upon the believers, the recompense or the judgment or the outcome of one's actions, and how people are in different levels of this. And talking also about the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and stating clearly that nobody can even allow to speak about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without knowledge. So let's see inshallah ta'ala what is in the surah, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us benefit from it inshallah. So we'll take the first 8 verses, and I hope you can hear me well, and then you can recite after me inshallah. Open the Mus'haf inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحاقة. 6 counts. ما الحاقة. وما أدراك ما الحاقة. كذبت ثمود وعاد بالقارعة. فأما ثمود فأهلكوا بالطاغية. وأما عاد فأهلكوا بريح صرصر عاتية. سخرها عليهم 7 ليال و8 أيام حسوما. فترى القوم فيها صرعى كأنهم أعجاز نخل خاوية. فهل ترى لهم من باقية. So Al-Haqqah, 6 counts, and that's why the longest med. This is the longest med, like Wal Dhalin. You have one of the letters of med, alif, waw, ya, and after it harf or a letter with shadda. Al-Haqqah, 6 counts. Al-Haqqah, make sure that the qaf comes from its place. Wama adraka, wama, 4 to 5 counts, and then adraka, ada, qalqala of the dal. Adara, and the ra is heavy. Adraka, malhaqqah, again 6 counts. كذبت ثمود وعاد بالقارعة. كذبت ثمود, the ta here can be a little bit difficult to say because it's the way you say the ta and the tha, they're close on the same point. So you would tend to skip the ta, but you have to say the ta. But you don't pause, right? So you say it, but without pausing. You say كذبت ثمود, كذبت ثمود, كذبت ثمود. Even air comes out from the ta of كذبت. ثمود وعاد, تنوين after الباء, meme sound. وعاد بالقارعة. فأما ميم مشدة takes 2 counts. ثمود فأهلكوا بالطاغية. وأما ميم مشدة takes 2 counts. عاد فأهلكوا. This is إخفاء. عاد فأهلكوا بريح, تنوين after صاد, that's heavy. بريح صرصر عاتية, no غنة. سخرها عليهم سبع قلقلة في الباء. 7 ليالي, تنوين after 12 takes 2 counts, إدغام. وثمانية أيام حسوما, أيام حسوما, غنة حسوما فترى, تنوين after إخفاء, إخفاء. فترى القوم فيها صرعى كأنهم, نون شدة takes 2 counts. أعجاز نخل, أعجاز نخل خاوية, is heavy, and then the tanween, there's no غنة there. فهل ترى لهم, 2 memes, لهم من باقية, نون after that, also the meme sound. The translation of the ayat. Al-Haqqah, I guess the translation is the inevitable reality. We'll talk about that inshallah. What is the inevitable reality? And what can make you know what is the inevitable reality? Thamud and Ad denied the striking calamity, meaning the resurrection. So as for Thamud, they were destroyed by the overpowering blast. And as for Ad, they were destroyed by a screaming, violent wind, which He, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, imposed upon them for 7 nights and 8 days in succession. So you would see the people therein fallen as if they were hollow trunks of palm trees. Then do you see of them any remains? This is the translation of the ayat. And as you see, the surah is called Al-Haqqah. And this is one of the names of the Day of Judgment. And Al-Haqqah, as we heard, has to do something with Al-Haqq, or reality. And so the inevitable reality, which is the Day of Judgment, this is one of the names of the Day of Judgment, the inevitable reality. And the word Al-Haqqah comes from Ha, Qaf, Qaf. Ha, Qaf, Qaf. Right? So, which comes from Al-Haqq. Al-Haqq is the truth, which basically the reality of things. That's why when they define Al-Haqq, it's the exact reflection of the reality, or what exists, right? And they, so it's basically Al-Haqqah is basically what's going to establish of the truth, which is the Day of Judgment. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as like Surah Al-Qari'ah, repeated the word again to bring the attention of the listener to the Quran or the reciter of the Quran of this matter to be repeated on the heart when it says Al-Haqqah, which is at the end of the day of Al-Qiyamah, because it's haqq, it's the truth, and it's going to happen, and it's a reality, more of a reality than the fact that I'm speaking now and you can hear me. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِنَّهُ لَحَقٌّ مِثْلَ مَا أَنَّكُمْ تَنْطِقُونَ. Indeed, it is haqq, it is the truth, the same way that the fact that you are speaking. Nobody can deny the fact that someone is speaking and someone is listening to. Well, the day of judgment is as reality as that, or even more. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is exalting, making greatness the importance of that day. That's why the takrar or the repetition here, Al-Haqqatu. Mal-Haqqa. What is the Haqqa? وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا-الْحَقَّ. What do you know about Al-Haqq? Right? All of that is to make tahweel. Tahweel, or to make something big. It's not that it's something small and he's making it big. It's when people do not get the reality of what is big. When you have a child, for example, and you try to get him to understand the reality of what he is going through, for example, an exam or an important exam, and he doesn't really care. So you try to make it as big as it's supposed to be, not to exaggerate it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He does not exaggerate. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His words, His speech is the most perfect. But it's when you look at the reality of the human beings, ourselves, are we thinking and not just believing, but believing and living the reality of the Day of Judgment? If we live the reality of the Day of Judgment, none of us will enjoy anything on the face of earth. As the Prophet ﷺ, he said in the hadith, لو تعلمون ما أعلم لضحكتم قليلا ولبكيتم كثيرا ولما تلذذتم بالنساء على الفرش ولخرجتم من الصعودات تجأرون إلى الله. If you know what I know, that you would, if you know what I know, you would laugh less and you would weep more, and you won't enjoy your wives in bed, and you would go out into the openness, تجأرون إلى الله, seeking help and refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you know what I know, if the ghaib is, it becomes seen, if we get to see what's coming ahead of the horrors of the Day of Judgment. But it's by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we don't lose it in this life, so that we can be able to live this life accordingly. But this is where Iman comes in place. That the reality of it is not something that is small. It's the biggest reality ever. It's the biggest event that would ever happen to anyone, the Day of Judgment, from the moment of death onward. So it's not something to be forgotten or for people to treat it as if it's nothing, or and that's what's amazing about the human beings. They go on with their lives as if there's no Day of Judgment, and there's not, and as if even there's no death. Right? So to have the importance of this and to keep having this meaning alive in our hearts, this is a duty, this is an important thing. So why is it called Al-Haqqah? Because the matters becomes clear and becomes reality of what has been known to be unseen. Right? So this is without any doubt whatsoever, and it's going to happen. Imam Sa'di rahimahullah, he said Al-Haqqah from the names of the Day of Al-Qiyamah, because it's a reality. لأنها تحق وتنزل بالخلق, and it's going to happen to the creation of Allah, and all the haqa'iq, all the truth will become apparent, will become clear, and what's hidden in the breasts and the hearts. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala عظم تعالى شأنها, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exalted its affairs by the repetition, by saying Al-Haqqatu mal-Haqqa wa ma adraka mal-Haqqa, because it has a great matter and it's such a huge thing. And from the greatness of it, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed the nations before by the immediate punishment as a result of them denying the Day of Judgment or the Day of Al-Haqqah. And it's the everlasting life afterwards. And people will be in Jannah or in the hellfire. So this is not a simple matter. So Al-Haqqah, Mal-Haqqah, Wama Adraka Mal-Haqqah. We talked about that before. Wama Adraka Mal-Haqqah, this is a question. Also like Mal-Haqqah, what is the Haqqah? Like what in the meaning of which, what thing made you know about that day? Right? So what's that question? What's the significance of this question? It's like as if you won't be able to see the reality of it till you see it with your own eyes. Right? So, and as Yahya ibn Salam, he said that I've known from those who are before me that every time the Quran says وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ, right, that means to the Prophet ﷺ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informed him of it, and he knows it very well. And وَمَا يُدَرِيكَ, like there's وَمَا يُدَرِيكَ is, that means he did not get the knowledge of it. So وَمَا يُدَرِيكَ لَعَلَّ السَّاعَةَ قَرِيبٌ. That means what do you know about the sa'ah, the hour? Maybe it's near. Nobody knows when is the hour is going to be. So every time وَمَا أَدَرَاكَ like that, that means it's known to the Prophet ﷺ. He's been informed of it. But وَمَا يُدَرِيكَ, that means he's not been informed of it. So this is again to make the ta'zeem, to make the exaltation of that day. وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ وَالْحَاقَّةُ كَذَّبَتْ ثَمُودُ وَعَادٌ بِالْقَارِعَةِ. Thamud and Ad denied Al-Qari'ah. Al-Qari'ah is one of the names of Al-Qiyamah, which is Al-Haqqah. And it's called Al-Qari'ah because it strikes the hearts by the horrors of it. So the people of Thamud and the people of Ad. The people of Thamud are the people of Salih. And the people of Ad are the people of Hud. They denied the day of Al-Qiyamah, which the day of Al-Qiyamah is supposed to strike the hearts with its horrors, makes people do not even enjoy their night's sleep without getting up and making salah and worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here is mentioning an example from the nations before. In this life, those who denied the day of judgment, as Thamud and Ad. كذبت ثمود وعاد بالقارعة. فأما ثمود, as for Thamud, فأهلكوا بالطاغية. الطاغية is this extreme shout that made them all silent, killed them all, and the shake that made them all dead. So either al-Taghiyya is as-sayha, the shout, which is, as Ibn Jarir al-Tabari rahimahullah, he chose to be the correct meaning. And some said al-Taghiyya is the sins, like the Tughyan, كذبت ثمود بطغواها. Right? So when they killed the she-camel, after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it a test for them. So they were destroyed for أهلكوا بالطاغية. And the sayha, which is mentioned throughout the Quran. And the taghiyya also comes from the meaning of transgressing their limits. So when they transgressed their limits, the punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came to them. وَأَمَّا عَادٌ فَأُهْلِكُوا بِرِيحٍ صَرْصَرٍ عَاتِيَةٍ. And as for Ad, they were destroyed by a wind, صَرْصَرٍ. Sarsar, that means it's very strong, that has a sound to it that is more striking and more louder than the sound of the thunder. Rihin sarsarin. And sarsarin, whether it's cold or this is what it comes from, that is intense in everything, in its sound, and its cold, and its everything. Rihin sarsarin atiyah. Atiyah, that means very strong, that nobody can stand facing this wind. We know that when people face some storms or things like that in this life, they're not able to stand. They have to hide them under the ground. So you can imagine a wind that uprooted the people from the ground, and it killed them all. The people of Ad, those who were Amali, they were so humongous in their bodies and very strong, and they would carve their homes in the mountains, and how the wind destroyed them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent this wind 7 days and it destroyed them all. سخرها عليهم 7 ليال و8 أيام حسوما. That means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala subjected them to this wind 7 ليال, 7 nights and 8 days, Husuma. Husuma, that means consecutive, one after the other, or as they call it, mash'umat, that means the most evil effect on them. فترى القوم فيها صرعى كأنهم أعجاز نخل خاوية. So you would see the people there صرعى. صرعى, dead. كأنهم أعجاز نخل is like the trunks of the palm trees. خاوية. خاوية, that means it fell on the ground or empty or ruined. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent it on them on 7 nights and 8 days. You know, في أيام النحسات, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called it in Surah Fussilat. You know, regardless what day it started and what day it ended, it's 7 nights and 8 days. And made them look as mentioned in the verse. Imam Sa'di rahimahullah, he said, أيام حسومة, that means such a miserable and evil wind that they were afflicted by, that destroyed them all. فَتَرَى الْقَوْمَ فِيهَا صَرْعَى. صَرْعَى means they're on the ground dead. كَأَنَّهُمْ أَعْجَازُ نَخْلٍ خَاوِيَةٍ. When you see a trunk of palm trees without its, cut off from its leaves, and it's just, on top of one another. So this is the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As you see in the verses, again, Al-Haqqah, Mal-Haqqah, Wama Adaraka Mal-Haqqah, something that every verse is is something that it has its effect in the heart, of course. Wama Adaraka from Dal Ra Ya, what do you know about Al-Haqqah? Kadhabat from Kadhaba, and the ta here refers to the tribe of Thamud. Wa'adun bil qari'ah, with the qari'ah, which is the striking calamity from qara'a, when you hit something, when you strike something, which is one of the names of the Day of Judgment. And we know al-qari'ah, mal-qari'ah, wa ma adraka mal-qari'ah. فَأَمَّا ثَمُودُ, as for Thamud, فَأُهْلِكُوا, they were destroyed from halaka. The word halaka can be, you can say about someone died as halaka without saying anything bad about him. It doesn't have to be that he was destroyed. Depends on the context. Halaka fulan, it doesn't mean that he's a bad person that died, but it refers that he died. Sometimes people, they use it in a negative way. So فَأُهْلِكُوا, they were destroyed بِالطَّاغِيَةِ, by the overpowering blast or so, from طَغَى, overpowered or overflowing. وَأَمَّا عَادٌ, and as for Ad, فَأُهْلِكُوا, they were destroyed, and the Alf is for the plural, بِرِيحٍ, with a wind, from Ra' wa Ha, بِرِيحٍ صَرْصَرٍ, again screaming, very strong in being cold, very strong with its sounds. And sarsar, bab is like when the door is, is not almost closed, and it brings the sound of the wind. So the wind was roaring, making a very loud noise. Atiyah, violent, from ayn ta waw. This is wa'ata wa'tuwan. So very strong, very violent. Sakharaha, from sakhara, that he imposed it upon them, alayhim, 7 layalin, 7 nights and 8 days. Right? So usually the night, since the night comes before the day, so you have, like, for example, when you travel, you can shorten the salah if you're going to be in a place less than 3 nights and 4 days. وَثَمَانِيَةَ أَيَّامٍ, and 8 days, حُسُومًا, in succession, one after the other, from Ha, Sin, Mim. And Ha, Sin, Mim refers to something to be, to remove the traces of something. And that's the same word is used when say someone hasam al-amr. Hasam al-amr, that means he finished it, he got it done. And one of the names of the sword is al-Husam. When there's people called Husam, the name of a person is Husam. It's from the same thing. And Husam is one of the names of the sword, and how the sword removes, something from its place also. So, and when they say, even they use it in sports and the like of this, they say Mubara Hasima. A game that is Hasima, that means it's going to be not of any, there's nothing after it to make up a defeat or something. That's the end of it. That's the game. So husuma in succession here again it refers to succession. فترى, so you would see from رأى فترى القوم فيها صرعى. صرعى, fallen, and that's المصارعة even. It's a name of wrestling, because you would make the person fall on the ground. And then masru' is the one that have epilepsy because he falls onto the ground, right? But here صرعى, they are on the ground, meaning dead. فترى القوم فيها صرعى كأنهم, as if they are أعجاز. أعجاز from عين جيم زي, which is the trunks, and that comes from its roots upward. And the ajuz of the insan is like the hips of the human being. So this is basically the foundation of the human beings. أعجاز نخل, the palm, the palms, خاوية, hollow, empty, from خاء واوية. فهل ترى لهم, so questioning, فهل ترى, do you see any for them, من باقية, any remains? That means nothing. So the question here is that there's no remains of them whatsoever. They all get destroyed and they get ruined. And even though they were very strong and things like this, and they were so strong that no nation were the like of them of their strength, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed them all when they denied the day of judgment and disbelieved in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as you see from the very beginning of the surah, it talks about the day of judgment to bring it in as a reality in the hearts, because it's something that made the early generations of Islam be the way they are. When they would pray at night and they would worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and with all of the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that the angels, they do not quit for a second worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throughout the entire life since they were created. They were created far before the human beings. And in the day of judgment, when they see the horrors of the day of judgment, the angels would say, "O Allah, ma abadnaka haqqa ibadatik." We did not worship you the way that you ought to be worshipped. And the prophets of Allah, every prophet of Allah will say, "Nafsi, nafsi," myself, myself. And the people would go from one messenger to the other till Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant him the permission to intercede because of the horrors of the day of judgment. So this is not something to be taken lightly. This is something that should occupy our life, and the hearts be attached to this. And it doesn't mean that a person doesn't enjoy what Allah permitted in this life. But the least, which is an obligation upon each and every one, that should be sufficient fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what's going to happen in the day of judgment, that makes the person away from a sinful life, away from a forgetful life, away from neglecting the obligations in our life. We will be asked about everything in the day of judgment, our ibadah, the rights of others, our wealth, everything. So to repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to regret in the time when the regret will benefit. And in the day of judgment, there is no benefit of a regret then. It does not count. The regret in this life is a good thing, is one of the means of expiation of the sins. When a person regret their sins and repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And to take lessons from the nations before. It doesn't matter how strong they are. So don't compromise your religion because of the strength of this nation or that nation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is able to destroy everyone. Especially if they deny the day of judgment and they disbelieve in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So one nation after the other is mentioned, and then the day of judgment is mentioned again. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring this reality in our hearts and make us have the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to make us steadfast upon the deen of Allah. Sallallahu alaihi wa sallam, baraka Muhammad wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.